going to show you guys a little bit here on the table I've been working on. This is the same wood from the Vanity. This is quarter sawn white oak. And there's a bunch more pieces that I've been commissioned to build that will be in this style at various locations in the house. This will be one portion for the dining set, and I have a sideboard and a buffet to build in the same style. This is, once again, somewhat an Asian influence with arts and crafts. And I'll show you a little bit of the table. Right now it's on a low table so that I can work on it. The top is detached, so if you see it unsquare anywhere, it's simply so that I can move it around. The legs that we have somewhat of a portion of an ellipse as the curve, and as you can see, it swells to a larger portion at the bottom, which gives the table a sense of stability and a lower sense of gravity. If I come over here a little closer, once again, this is the mortise and tenon joint. It's already been glued, yet to be pegged, and what we're going to use for the pegs is going to be walnut. And there'll be something else in walnut on this table that we'll talk about here in a few moments. The undercarriage of the structure, we have these two support beams that half lap through the support beam that you see here, and they carry through as a singular piece all the way to the other side. The holes that you see underneath are for the attachment so that the tabletop can move, can expand and contract, and of course come off if it ever has to be shipped or refinished. This is the top, and most likely from this view you're not going to be able to see the pattern of the tiger fleck too well, but I am going to kind of move from one side to the other so that you can kind of get a feel for the grain in this wood. We've got a multiple glue up, most likely of about 7 boards, and they should all be riffs on. And if anybody's unfamiliar with that, just simply Google it and you'll understand better than I could probably tell you now. If I turn this direction now, you will see what I simply call as the lights begin to develop in the figure. So in order to make this tabletop come out correctly visually from the observer's point of view, you have to have the grain aligned in the same direction. Which means all of the boards, as best as I could, are arranged with the same grain flowing in the same way. Now, for many of you who are unfamiliar with woodwork, it does not simply mean, like you would understand when you sand, that you're going to sand with the grain. Well, as you see by the motion of my finger, I'm sanding back and forth. Well, the grain itself in the wood does not run back and forth. It only runs one way. And in essence, it's kind of like petting a cat or a dog. The fur lays over itself in one direction. It's like the feathers on a bird. They lay over themselves in one direction. So the same thing with the fibers here on the table. They're only laying over in one direction, which means in essence, you can only carve and ease in one direction. So you have to find out the flow of the grain, and when you do, you can make all of these patterns themselves reflect the light equally. So this is quarter sawn white oak. Now, in this portion here, I'm going to show you a little demonstration about how, at least in this shop, I'm beginning to achieve the protrusion known as the tenon that's going to go into the breadboard end. So the top here is just simply being held in place with a few clamps, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how we're going to rough this up with a chisel to remove the majority of the waste. And what I'm trying to achieve here is to bottom out my router at this location right here, so that I can form the cheek wall, the tenon, that's going to accept another structure on the end of the table that has a fair curve known as a breadboard end, which is going to provide strength for the table and do a few other things that are going to help correct a few design issues, because we're trying to make the tabletop thicker than the material we're actually using. So there's going to be a few strips that are glued onto the sides to make the tabletop up here thicker. And then as a result, the breadboard ends themselves can be thicker, and then the illusion from the table itself from the outside will be that the tabletop is thick all the way through. Now, as you can see, that is roughed up because you don't want to take your router and try to take out too much material at one time. So a chisel has been used to par down the edge to get rid of most of the waste. Give you a small example, but to just kind of let you understand why this is going to be so easy, or at least appear easy with the chisel, is because we're dealing with a rift sawn lumber. And that is where you see these grain lines are almost 90 degrees up and down. Quarter sawn lumber, if I understand correctly, should be 45 degrees. Nonetheless, this is probably the most structural style of lumber that you could use to achieve a stable tabletop. All right, here we go. Getting closer and closer. But I don't want to go the full distance down. Just enough to make it easier for the router. Right. Now, that was probably a little loud. This will be a little louder, so if you want to turn the volume down, if you haven't already, go ahead. Got a router here modified, a little bit of painter's tape on top, so it does not scar the already sanded surface here. Just simply, you got to set the router depth a little higher than the cheek that you're trying to achieve here. Once again, the cheek itself is the sidewall of this tenon. Now, you can probably see quick work would have took a lot longer, would have been a lot noisier, a lot rougher, a lot harder on your router if you would have left the material in place. We tried, it didn't work as well. So for a small shop and maybe somebody that does not have the best tools in the world, maybe trying to eliminate the waste in another way would help the router get down closer, as we've done here with the chisel. One more thing to think about is when I set the router on the tabletop, I basically didn't put all of my pressure to this side, but I made sure that I consciously flattened the tray, the router base on this portion. Any twist in this direction, any tilt in this direction as you move forward over to here is going to result in a more shallow tenon, which will make it looser in the mortise that you plan to achieve. Anyway, I hope that this was something to see, and we'll show you a little bit more as the table gets built further. Thanks.